So one thing you probably heard about in the last week or so is that Batgirl number 9 had recently dropped a huge bombshell. Lady Shiva, one of the best fighters, possibly the best fighter in the DC Comics universe, had a secret child with the Bronze Tiger.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
For those who do not know any of the history regarding Cassie Kane, aka Batgirl, one thing you need to know about her is that she is the daughter of one of the best fighters in all of DC Comics, and that's Lady Shiva. Shiva is basically the woman who is the litmus test for when any character in DC Comics is fighting somebody. Technically there's two characters. It's Lady Shiva and Black Canary, and honestly, any day of the week, I don't think it would be out of the spectrum of possibility for anyone to be able to make a case that either one of them is the best. Matter of fact, they literally just had a story arc. Black Canary, best of the best, and it was just Black Canary and Lady Shiva having a brawl for it all to determine who was better. And that's just kind of what it always comes down to. But one of the other characters that also kind of gets lost in the conversation is Bronze Tiger. And he's a character who has long had a history with Lady Shiva. They came up together, both herself and Bronze Tiger and Richard Dragon. They trained together. They have worked together for time immemorial in DC Comics. But one of the things that often gets forgotten about is that these two characters, it was always kind of hinted at and danced around, and in some cases it was actually openly talked about that these two characters had something going on. Recently in the pages of Batgirl number 6, Lady Shiva is believed to have been killed off. Now, before everyone starts, running and grabbing their pitchforks, let me just go ahead and say right now, while it's actually pretty casually talked about that Lady Shiva is in fact very dead, we, for one, don't ever actually see her get killed. I mean, we see her get a sword sliced at her, but we don't actually see the body. The body is never really truly revealed. There is a tape that an audio recording that Lady Shiva leaves for Cassie to learn more about Lady Shiva's final words to her, and basically telling her to go seek out the Bronze Tiger, ask about the Jade Tiger. And I think this was all kind of setting up something I think a lot of people were probably already suspecting, because we got a recontextualized origin for Lady Shiva, a very definitive origin kind of setting all this up. And by the time you get to Batgirl number 9, when Cassie finally comes face to face with Bronze Tiger, it's revealed that Cassie has a brother. Now, for those unfamiliar with the history of Batgirl, at least the Cassandra Cain version, Lady Shiva was not a great mother, at least not on paper. With some of the recontextualized origin, maybe there's a little bit of, kind of change up in that, at least a little bit. But at the end of the day, Lady Shiva is very much an absentee mother, regardless of the circumstances. Originally, it was believed that Lady Shiva had just willingly given up Cassie over to David Kane, who is her father. And the man who raised her basically is the entire reason why she had difficulty speaking, because he didn't really train her to speak, he trained her to be a weapon. But the new origin kind of plays around with that a little bit, at least the circumstances thereof. The main important part is that when Cassie discovers that Bronze Tiger has a secret, and that secret is that he and Lady Shiva had a son by the name of Tenji Turner, aka Jade Tiger. This kind of muddies the water a little bit for the family history of Cassie, largely because when it comes to Cassie and her strained relationship with her mother, one of the big things is that Lady Shiva was just never really around, and even when she was around, she wasn't really particularly a great mother, on top of that. But then you find out that, yeah, there was a kid out there who, and mind you, it kind of seems like Tenji is about roughly around the same age. Maybe not exactly the same age, but pretty damn close to the same age as Cassie. Once again, we don't really get an exact age on Tenji, but what we do know that kind of makes this whole thing interesting is that he's been trained, very heavily trained, not just by Bronze Tiger, his father, and Lady Shiva, his mother, but it seems like he's even got some moves that are reminiscent of Richard Dragon. He's quite literally been aware of Cassie and her exploits as Batgirl. He knows who she is, but he doesn't realize in the moment that he is actually speaking to Cassie when he's talking to Batgirl. He doesn't find that out until Cassie kind of spills the beans about the whole thing. But what's interesting here is that he has trained his entire life knowing one day he would meet his sister, and that he knew how good she was because Bronze Tiger always gloated about how good she was. And it makes sense that Bronze Tiger would say as much. He literally trained Cassie to be who she is today. He knows what he's talking about. So Bronze Tiger was able to train his son Tenji to fight just like some of the best fighters in the DC Comics universe. So it's no wonder that when Tenji goes toe-to-toe with Cassie, he's able to hold his own with her and even get some one-ups on her. All this gets made more interesting because of the fact that for the longest time, it was believed that, Lady Shiva, because of the fact that she was such a terrible mother, it would not make any sense for her to have had another child after so willingly giving her, first child away, especially under the circumstances. And now we find out that, yeah, all that stuff was not necessarily exactly how we thought it was. And now we find out, yeah, there's another kid that was out there in the wind. And now that kid is, a fighter and warrior, no different than Cassie. But I wonder how their upbringing is going to really affect their relationship, because the thing we first take stock of is that Tenji doesn't seem to know the full story about Lady Shiva and Bronze Tiger. It seems like Bronze Tiger gave Tenji the sanitized version of his past, that he left out the times that he used to be an assassin and hitman for hire, that he used to be a member of the Suicide Squad. He's only really seemed to give Tenji the high notes of the whole thing, and probably seems to have left out any of the bad stuff about his mother as well. So Tenji is of the belief that Bronze Tiger and Lady Shiva are heroes, no differently than Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, or Green Lantern for that matter. He's like, oh yeah, they're the two greatest heroes in the world, blah, 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 blah. He's been sold a false bill of goods. Now, it's not to say that Bronze Tiger and Lady Shiva both haven't calm down a bit in their time in the DC universe, especially in the last decade or more. But yeah, that would be like the Joker telling somebody that, oh yeah, I used to be a bad guy, but I'm good now. I haven't done anything bad in like 6 weeks. It's just, I don't know, it's weird. But I think it says a lot that Tenji seems to be more level-headed, and I think it's just a matter of them having different fathers. Whereas, well, Bronze Tiger technically was kind of like a fatherly figure to Cassie. He wasn't her, father. You have David Kane, who was basically the guy who was in that particular position, and that guy was a whole psychopath. So it kind of rubbed off onto Cassie, but just his ways and machinations that basically led to her becoming a human weapon and having to unlearn a lot of toxic traits and negative things that she was raised to believe. Whereas with Jade Tiger, he did not have any of that. He got Bronze Tiger at a point in his life where he was a bit more level-headed and more on the side of the angels than not. It makes you wonder exactly what their relationship is going to be like going forward, but I think that right now the most important part is them trying to get to the bottom of what happened with Lady Shiva, why all of this is happening, and trying to stop the swords from trying to end the line of Lady Shiva, as Norbu mentions at the end of issue 9. It's one of those things you're just gonna kind of have to go with. Like, it's a retcon that you're gonna have to just kind of open your heart to. Either you can get jiggy with it or you can't. I can get jiggy with it. I like the idea of Lady Shiva and Bronze Tiger having a secret child, even if it is a little weird from a timing standpoint, and it does kind of muddy the water on Lady Shiva and her relationship with Cassie a little bit. Kind of makes you wonder. It definitely opens up the story, and both characters for an arc. I think that, well, once again, I don't know if we'll get to see play out the way I would like to see it, because once again, Lady Shiva is supposed to be dead right now. But once again, we didn't see a body.
Body that nigga, and then bring the body back. Don't come back with no body.
Didn't see a body. So And well, yeah, that's one of those things we can kind of wish with one hand, shit in the other, and see which one fills up first. I'm pretty sure we'll get an answer, but I feel like killing off Lady Shiva, I don't know, this seems weird. And I feel like, she's a character who's cheated death plenty of times. I mean, yeah, would it cheapen the sacrifice she made? Yeah, but I do kind of want to know what's gonna happen here. Like, well, what comes next for Cassie Kane and Tenji Turner? Also, that's a wild ass name, Tenji Turner. That's, I mean, some alliteration there. Tenji Turner. I'm not gonna lie, there's gonna be some days where if I ever have to say this name too many times, I might accidentally call this Tina. Yeah, anyway, I got nothing else.